Okay, I'm pretty loud, so. I'm good with that. All right, let's call this meeting to an order. This is the January 17th, 2019 meeting of the Measure J Commission. And Ariana, I'll let you take roll call.
Commissioner Williams did email notifying that he wouldn't be in town for this meeting. Commissioner Bixson, Vice Chair Craig.
Here.
Chair Gazan,
Here.
Commissioner Gray, Commissioner Hammond,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Marshall.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the agenda for, oh, I did pass over that. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we have a motion to accept today's agenda?
I second.
Okay, all in favor of today's agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Do we have a motion to accept and approve the minutes from our last meeting in January? Or actually, this was from December 6.
Are we in January?
We are in January. I'm pushing us into February. A motion to accept the minutes?
Yeah, I motion to accept.
Okay. So a second? I'll second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I abstain, I wasn't here. Yeah.
Okay, this is time for public comment. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Measure J Commission on agenda items and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Although the Measure J Commission values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take action on items not listed on the posted agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and it appears that we do have a speaker. Welcome.
Thank you. Excuse me. And good afternoon, commissioners. First of all, my name is David Hyams, resident here in Palm Springs, not too far from here. And I've been attending since May, probably I'm not sure 4 or 5 of the meetings. I know we were off for a few months there in the summer, but of the other meetings that were held, I've had that opportunity. First of all, I'd like to thank the commissioners, Christine, and I believe there was one other commissioner, Michael, for your time, on the commission. Mark, because I know you've kind of reached the end of your term, I guess, term limited out. But thank you very much. You've been here from the beginning, and I would hope that anyone who becomes a commissioner coming up here soon, now that I know the interview date, I'll be one of those, would take the advantage to reach out to those that have been on the commission during this period and just kind of glean from them wisdom and knowledge and perspective to take this into the future, right? We've got a number of years obviously left with this, so thank you very much. A couple of thoughts just from the meetings I've attended. I know that one commissioner was going to reach out and meet with the council subcommittee on budgets. And at the time, and still do, I think it would be an opportunity for, if it's okay, for a second commissioner to be involved in that, just for the learning part of that process. So maybe you have a member, Michael, I'm not sure if that was you, but somebody that's been there a bit longer and has that perspective, and then perhaps a newer commissioner who would be interested in that interesting journey to get that knowledge and wisdom. So I just throw that out there. And then I guess the other idea or thought that I had as I was looking in the budget here, and there's the amount for the community enhancements, or obviously there's been an underspend on that. I would perhaps think it prudent to reach back out to the community. I know this was done early on, and they had what looked like a long list of ideas and suggestions. If we've kind of worked through the ones we had, and those whatever bore fruit, or we didn't go forward with them, and there's funds left over, perhaps reach back out to the community and see if maybe there's some that will rise up to the top, or maybe even some new ideas might be thrown out there for those expended, those dollars that still look like they're out there that could be spent for these community, looks like $1 million or so on these community enhancements and whatnot. So it might be an opportunity again to reach back out to the community. Yeah, I know, again, just thinking of that, the redistricting, they reached out to the community to get feedback, and I know they were really happy and impressed with the sort of community involvement. So I would think perhaps you might give some input there. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your time so far. Well, welcome. This is our January meeting. 2 updates. It sounds like we do have interviews for 10 candidates to join this commission. They will happen hopefully on February 13th, and we'll get them involved in that, hopefully that next meeting then on the 21st, I believe, of February. And we should have a very full table. What is the count typically for that? Out of the 10 candidates, do they all automatically, is there an ideal number that they allow on this commission? Is it 9 or? 9. So not all will, okay. Okay. So we're replacing, okay, so the 4. All right. We also learned some new information today, and I wish Commissioner Gray was here as well. But I know that you have a meeting coming up with the library, and at this point, from a presentation from the College of the Desert for their Palm Springs campus, there is no mention of a traditional library to be on that site. So again, this will be something that I think hopefully we're going to get some more clarity on, but it certainly looks to be in the direction that they are not in any way, shape, or form planning any type of space that would house books or be of any function as a library. As this is going to be a pretty progressive and very flexible campus and geared more towards 4 pillars of education. And so at that point, I would think that we're pretty safe to say the city will continue with its own library and community center from a budget standpoint.
Can I just say something? Could I just make a comment?
You certainly can,
I
Commissioner
was at
Hammond.
the same meeting today, sitting next to Jeannie Kays, and she was totally unaware that there was absolutely no connection happening with the Palm Springs Library. So she was going to look further into that. So the college hasn't communicated that to the library yet, or the city hasn't communicated that to the library. So you may want to talk to her about what her understanding is.
And what's her role?
She's our librarian.
She's our librarian.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with her.
Oh.
But
She was.
yeah, I think today was kind of news possibly. I don't even know what our council is aware of or city manager at this point. And again, COD can operate somewhat under the radar, but it appears to me that they are not really looking based on the functionality of what that campus is going to do. It seemed pretty clear to me that a library is almost out of date for the type of studies that are going to happen at that facility. They'll have an area where they can purchase books. And it doesn't seem like there's any intention of them even looking to collaborate with our current city library. So I would say that it's probably business as usual as it applies to our library here in the city and whatever we want to do with it from a funding standpoint, and that COD is going to operate solely on their own and probably have no library function. And I don't think that it would even serve a purpose, especially as they're looking at new technologies. They're not looking for a place. Books are just antiquated for what those programs are going to be, except for their textbooks. Okay, so moving forward. The Finance Director's report and update, and we have our new Finance Director joining us, the new Jeff, and it's Nancy. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So are we all on the mid-year summary page for the budget? It's page 1 of 1 of the financials. And the heading is Multi-Year Summary of Available Measure J Funds. The good news is, if you go to the bottom, we have a year-to-date revenue comparison through December, which is mid-year, from 18-19, from 17-18 to 18-19, there is an increase of $609,000 in revenue. That is a 9.2% increase. That's good news. So with this, I don't have any bad news. So do we want to go to the unfunded capital projects? Okay. I don't know if you generally discuss these items here, but feel free.
Just to note for people who hadn't a chance to look at the pages yet, there were no changes other than what she just mentioned on the financial. So everything else is exactly the same as the end of last year.
I have a quick question. Any updates on the Uptown, the Andes agreement?
I'm not aware of any at this time, but I will let you know at the next meeting.
Okay.
I can say a little bit to that, is that at the meeting, the liaison meeting with the city council, and Nancy was there, it was pretty much decided that the $2 million that we have allocated to the Andes would go to the downtown park if the Dream Hotel spends their $2.7 million that they toward that Andes parking lot. I think that's where you were going with that,
yeah.
Right? So that's the thought right now.
Okay, well, why don't we go to the, there's 2 audits here. The first one is done by LSL. There were basically no findings. And if you go to the financials, you'll show the cash and investments at 16,116,161, and accounts payable at $2 million. Page 3. And page 4, it'll show you the taxes that were collected, which is also $14,993,495, and the expenditures at $8,567,776. Again, there were no findings on this, so the audit went well. We're in compliance.
Can you remind me what the due from the city's general fund is? The $2,347,000? As a receivable?
I believe that would be, the money that is collected is, for Measure J, is in the, it goes to the general fund, and the general fund generally transfers it out to the Measure J fund.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Mark, were you on page 3 when you asked that?
Yeah.
That $2 million?
Okay.
Do you have any additional questions on the audit?
No questions.
There is also agreed upon procedures done, and it, right here, for the City of Palm Springs, and its revenue and expenditure report. It basically gives you the same information, but in a different format. The Schedule 1, which is in color, I'll wait till you get to that point. This one goes in more detail as far as the expenditures. It'll show you the adopted budget, the revised budget, and the actual to date. The sales tax came in approximately 8% more than was budgeted. And the expenditure listing, most of these, if they weren't spent during the fiscal year, were carried over into the new year.
So the 1.193 is being carried over into 2019?
I didn't do the carryover list. I don't have that here, but I'm sure most of whoever was on the committee that wanted the project money carried over, it was carried over. I could give you more detail on the carryover list at the next meeting we have. Okay. So now if we would like to go to the projects, I will turn it over. Thank you.
So the commission did not receive the list of unfunded projects ahead of time, I'm assuming, correct? No, I was late getting it out and you guys did not receive it. But this list generally reflects what Commissioner Johnson, when you met with the ad hoc committee, these were some of the projects that were discussed.
Yes, they were. Yeah. These particular projects, the main focus, though, was on the ANDES and on the community projects. Oh, I'm sorry. And the community projects for the CVAG grant for 2019, which the Marcus recommended, and I supported that. The commission also supported that 100%. And so that was the only real decision that was made on all of these.
Okay.
Other than to hold off on spending money on the bollards until 2019, don't spend any in December, and then on the police CD, the technology, it was decided to only spend on the design for 2018, and look at that first, and then not spend any more money. What they were trying to figure out at this meeting mostly was, what are we going to spend before the end of the year?
Okay.
Versus what we were going to spend all in 2019.
Okay, and in your, I guess, projection for the year, there was the item for this particular meeting was to go over unfunded projects, and the commission can look at them and make suggestions or recommendations as to which projects we should look at funding in the future. One note is Commissioner Hammond was asking about the grant money we put in. Unfortunately, the city of Palm Springs was not successful in receiving the grant money. So the $2 million I think it was about $2 million, we did not receive it. There was, Don was stuck in another meeting right now. He had a little bit more information as to why it is that the city didn't get it, but we were competing with many agencies, and only a few got the money. So, go ahead.
So do you have some ideas for alternative ways to pay for these infill sidewalks?
Well, I'm not right now, no. But that we should look at trying to fund and work on a project to fund the infill sidewalks.
I know this is redundant, but given that the city has spent about a year, maybe more, in consultant time and staff time to design all these projects, communicated with all of the homeowners about doing the project, had meetings with homeowners about doing the project. It seems like we have a considerable investment in this already, and to let it go stale at this point would it just seems like it's not fiscally responsible. So I would really encourage commissioners to hold the city's feet to the fire and find some more money to do it. And maybe look at some of the money left over
That we have.
in our budget to get started with it.
Right.
Although I wouldn't recommend, I would not be in favor of starting a project without having the full funds for it, because I don't think that's a good use to do half of a project and then pay additional money to bring them back again, and we know it just costs more money
Right.
when they're jumping all over town at different times. So I'm incredibly disappointed. But you already know that,
Right.
yeah, so.
Okay, so what is this going to mean? Okay, because this is news to me. What is this going to mean toward the money we were going to allocate toward the 2019 CVAG grant? Because that was money we were taking with the idea that this other grant would go through. Now it has not. What about that 2 million? It's 2.1, I forget
Right.
the exact number, $2,154,000.
Right.
What happens with that money?
Well, I really don't have a response for you right now on what's going to happen with that money or how we're going to get that money to be able to backfill and to actually complete the projects. But we can discuss it with Mark, the assistant city manager, and see where that money is going to come from.
So following up on Christine's point, and going through the audit, we've got $1,193,000 that we're carrying over. Obviously hasn't been allocated. It seems like maybe we should suggest at least to put a hold on that until a full review can be done to see where that $2 million is coming from.
Yeah, and this question is more for Commissioner Hammond. I mean, we have a lot of projects that weren't going to be completed in that hotspots. I mean, is there,
Which one? First one, second one?
well, I don't know, all of them, I guess, combined. I mean, when we got that list, I have it buried in the book here somewhere.
Of 1,058 projects?
Right.
Yeah.
And so many of them that weren't going to happen there, and you start to add up all those, dollars.
If I would just make a comment on the concept of going back out to the community to get additional projects. And as our public comment speaker, and I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, but this very first project that has 1,058 projects on it that range from soup to nuts was a learning experience for the commission and for the city that we did that. We got input from all over 300 applications for projects, and the city did not, no one knows how much a project is going to cost when they submit an application for it. And when an application is accepted, I mean, we can guesstimate, the city can guesstimate based on your experience, but the dollar amount for the projects was far exceeded the monies that were available for projects. And they were all over the board in terms of where they went. So there was no real logic to grouping projects for cost savings. And what we learned was by theming the projects, which we did with project number 2, would give the city the staffing. We could ensure that there was appropriate staffing, or we could hire a consultant to help in a logical, practical way, and estimate the projects and do them in such a way that we weren't going out with 150 different bids that just took so much staff time that they couldn't get that done or their jobs done. So that was the reason we did it once, and we decided it made so much more sense for the city and the city staff if we just themed the projects, which is why that's what we did with the second group of projects and the third with parks. Yeah.
Right, and I realize that. I'm just wondering if we should, and maybe this is something outside of this meeting, do an audit of, we had that list of all of the 3 years of hotspots of what just wasn't going to get done. And I know that they're not hard figures because we didn't know the actual cost, but there were budgets assigned to them. And if we look at that, I think that we could probably get close to that 2 million, possibly. I don't know. But there's a lot of unspent money on hotspots.
The project still exists. The one that went to council, when we put it out to bid, the council said, let's hold off, go out for the grant money. That project.
The sidewalks.
Yeah, it's still a valid project, and money can be allocated. The commission can recommend to put money to do that project. And
yeah, I think the first group, there is a guesstimate for what the cost of those projects were, and I think an example would be the shade structure at Mizell, which the city budgeted $25,000, and it ended up costing $87,000. Wasn't it $87,000?
I think they narrowed it down to 37 by the time they.
Oh, 37, but before they actually did it, yeah. Yeah, and it's useless. It's useless. So those are the kinds of things that we have learned with the projects. So I would.
Well, even with that project that we're actually putting together from the very beginning, I think we were here in this commission where we're talking about how the gaps were, why we wouldn't complete those projects, and we understood that the very first go around, the estimate that the city came was completely off, or was the actual projects cost a lot more money than the money we assumed it would cost at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I think it transitioned to this big project that we put out to bid that was put on hold to see if we could get grant money. But but that project still exists, and money still can be allocated from Measure J to finish that project.
I think it's important that particular project is a safety project, and even though some people never see bicyclists on Farrell.
I still don't.
I just saw a dozen of them this morning in front of the new college. But there are more and more bicyclists and more pedestrians. And we picked the project 3 years ago because we felt it was necessary. And while our numbers went, according to the police, this last week, our numbers went down in collisions in 2017 when we started our focus in 2014-15. Numbers went down at collisions, and in 18 they went back up again. So, I think it's really important.
I would like to, I guess, make a motion, and that's, we need to get on the agenda for next month, because we have really new information here on what this means for this $2.2 million that we have in community projects. What about the sidewalks? What about the budgeting that we need to do? Where is the gap? We do have that information from I think it was our November meeting, was it? That they'd given us on all the community projects. So I would say that we as commissioners should go back and take a look at that. I don't want you guys to reinvent the wheel. You've already created that list for us, so hopefully everybody kept it. If not, I'm sure Ariana would be more than happy to get us that. But let's get that on the agenda for next month, if everybody agrees, so we can really do a deep dive on this.
If that's a motion, I second it.
Okay.
And all in favor on that motion?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, I think it's good for us for the February meeting, of course, we're going to have a lot of new commissioners, but for us current commissioners to go back, look at that spreadsheet. As a guideline, Joelle, is it okay for us to, based on that, it showed what projects just weren't going to happen? we conducted a study that might have cost some money, but other than that, the project died. Can we look at that and take, again, the figures there are sort of pie in the sky because we don't know really what those projects, those are guesstimates of cost of what that project is, but I'd kind of like to be able to at least look and say, okay, roughly, I think I found $1 million in this spreadsheet. And then can we look at, and does it make sense for us who are remaining and for the new commissioners to then look at these 3 years and prioritize what is potentially can get done. And if we find $1 million, let's concentrate on the hottest of hot spots, where sidewalks are missing. I'm tired of seeing tourists walking through dirt where sidewalks end. It's embarrassing as a city. So, to me, that's one of my pet peeves, but I think that is important. So maybe, again, and I don't know if I'm talking out of turn here. So, Commissioner Hammond?
The 3-year project, the engineering started out with studying each of the projects to make sure that they were warranted. And so many of the projects for stop signs, signals, crosswalks were not warranted from an engineering perspective. So I'd say those are done. And I believe that traffic calming was one of the other projects that we had set aside $60,000 for. But because of the road diets that we have been doing, which is a form of traffic calming, that, and I know, Joelle, you'll jump in anytime. But we did not feel a need to go ahead with that $60,000 study when we were feeling very comfortable that our speed limits were coming down, regardless of what a lot of people say. But they are coming down to at least the speed limit that's marked on the street in many cases, not all cases. But so I'm not sure what other projects there might be on that list.
Right. What I did want to suggest is maybe we meet with Chair Gazan, and just to go over that list, just so we clarify, so we look at it, and because there's been a lot of time already spent on that list, and there's, like you're mentioning, a lot of projects were not viable, a lot of projects were under cost or valued, so the costs were a lot higher, significantly higher than was mentioned. So we can sit and before the meeting, and we just go over everything so that we come to an understanding of what it is that is valid from that hotspots.
Yeah.
And then we can focus on the maybe budgeting for the project that we didn't get the money for, the grant for. And
The sidewalks.
So, yeah, I think.
And the sidewalks were actually cut down quite a bit too. In many areas, we made the decision to finish the sidewalks on one side of the street or complete the sidewalks on one side of the street when it was doing it on both sides of the street may have not just doubled but tripled the cost of it because of the amount of gap.
And we had residents that refused the sidewalk.
Residents that refuse sidewalks, and the city also requires new developers, or if somebody buys a lot and wants to build a house, the city now requires that they do a sidewalk if it's in a neighborhood that has sidewalks.
Right.
So I think that.
Well, I would almost rather meet offline, and maybe Commissioner Hammond
Yeah, I'm
can lend her
available.
time as a consultant to Measure J.
I'm expensive.
We hear that. No, that would be great. And that
Yeah.
way, then we can
Yeah.
come into the meeting with a little bit more understanding,
Yeah.
because I think it is kind of a cumbersome process. But I'm more than willing to kind of get my arms around it, because I saw it before and I was
Yeah.
starting to add up the figures. And we'll do our best to try to find that 2 million.
And that's go ahead, sorry.
And that would clean up that list, because there were so many places that, stop sign not justified. They have to make the numbers work, and there were a lot of those. So we'd have a better idea of what we're looking at.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. And I think we should keep it on, I think we agreed in one of the meetings, we want to still keep it on the list, but maybe add a column where that particular item is dead. And then maybe just have no dollar amount assigned to it, but at least have it there as a record that that was something that was looked at. We didn't want to eliminate it completely.
In that meeting, the offline meeting, we could also go over these projects, the unfunded capital projects, this list. I know it's a new list for everyone to see. It is a carryover. A lot of them are a carryover from last year.
I was going to say, these all look familiar.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of them are carryover, but I feel like even the ones that we voted on to fund for last year,
They're still here.
they're still here.
Everything here is except for the $650,000 for the downtown park, which was the only officially approved piece from what we had recommended at the meeting in May.
So those
They're
other
still-
items have not been approved by
No.
council.
Not by the city council, by the Mayor Moon and Christy Halstage and David Reddy and Marcus that was in the room together at that meeting. There was discussion that the bollards would go forward. And there was discussion that the police department, CAD, will go forward. So most of what we did recommend will probably go forward, but has not been officially approved by the entire city council. Is
Those
that
are-
correct, Nancy? Yeah.
And those are generally the top 5 that are here.
Yeah, so the top 5 that we're looking at, although I don't think we looked at
Is it-
sprinkler
actually-
system.
I think
Yeah, 1,
that's
2,
not the one.
6, and 10 are 4 of the 5 that we had recommended, and then the 5th was the downtown park, which was approved.
That's right. I thought in my mind that I had put them all 1 through 5 on here, but I think I didn't do that.
Yeah, because the restrooms are still here.
Right. Yeah, they
Okay.
even recommended $200,000 more for the restrooms than we asked for at the meeting I was at in December.
Okay. Commissioner Craig, go ahead.
Help me with something from my memory. When the Measure J had, year and a half, 2 years ago, had said about allocating funds for the parks, for that commission,
Right.
and for the police. Both were given heads up. Then there was a caveat that if it was needed for the downtown park, it would be removed.
Oh, you're talking about when the park commission came and, okay, what they did is they presented, and Christine, jump in any time now, and we approved it with the caveat that if those funds were necessary for the downtown park, that we would pull those back for the downtown park. And so they understood that. They weren't happy about it, but they understood that to be accurate. And now that the downtown park is $3.5 million over budget, that's pretty clear that that will happen. And also that the $2 million that was originally slated for the Andes parking structure will go to the downtown park.
Got it. That's what I wanted to.
Yeah, so that's where we are right there with that. Go ahead.
And I would add to that, the concept that the Park Commission brought in, we asked that they tighten it up into a project, since it was such a huge
broad, yeah.
concept. So that was the other thing. And I would imagine that we will see them again,
Yeah.
because they have been working and thinking about projects.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that is on the city councils. They understand that. They have talked to them separately to us because they understand the importance of shade and all the
Right.
things that were in that presentation.
Right.
They weren't aware that the park had actually talked to us about it
Oh,
until this meeting, but they are aware now. And so they totally support pretty much what they had presented to us. They need to refine
Okay,
it a
so
little
it's in the
bit.
right direction. Thank you.
So do we have any more from staff? Any other comments from commissioners? So does that bring us back to public comment?
Well,
Commissioner Hammond?
So, in the past, we've usually talked about community projects in February, March, made decisions probably by April. I don't remember. It could have been March we made decisions. So the commission will continue with that, receiving suggestions for a theme for a community project?
I think we're very open to that. I feel like we're still working on past themes. We haven't even approached the parks theme.
And, yeah, I understand
I mean,
that.
they
but-
seem to be so far off. I feel like we have to get through where we've been. I mean, I know that there's that money allocated unless we can just kind of skip over that. We've got the $1 million. And I guess when I look at these themes, I'm wondering if we should, for future, if we should look at a project where we could actually see it happen within that fiscal year.
I don't think that's practical, because it takes at least a year to design a project. I jump in with,
You're
No, I
correct for
realize
this.
that, but-
From conception to design to bidding it, you're looking at a
But
year or
it's
more.
$1 million, correct?
right.
So, yeah, I guess it just depends on it, but so many of these projects are getting muddied because of the length of time, and that's what makes me nervous, that a lot of this doesn't get completed, and then the community's disappointed. And I realize that some things might have to go through design. $1 million is not a lot. It doesn't go very far when it comes to, whether you're building a new restroom facility or whatever at a park, or even if it's landscape maintenance, you can chew through that money pretty quickly. And I'm not making a blanket statement on this. I'm just saying that I feel like right now we're so behind on these current themes. I want to see us get through them and get moving with them. We can look at the future, but they're going to be a ways off.
And I would say we're right on time with these projects, these future projects, because the Hotspots 2.0 project was designed and went out for grants. There were some grants requested, or applications for grants. $6 million in funding was received for that. Now the city is doing all of the analysis, assessment, in order to have the hardware built for the project. I'm looking at you because you know this far. You're an engineer. I sit on a commission. I garden. I'm a gardener. And the electrical and the water and the sewer, they're assessing what's happening in a street that's probably close to 100 years old and the infrastructure underneath it. So it takes time. They wouldn't even be doing that if it wasn't for that initial $2 million, because it'll be a 2-year project, and then the $6 million grant. And with Parks as well, I would expect Parks would be coming back in because they've got a project. And once they have the project, that's great. Then they have to design it.
Right, we can go to that.
Yeah, and then there's the possibility of going out for grants for that project as well.
And the
So-
parks, was that last year's? Did that fall under the
No.
million for?
No,
Or is
it's
it this fiscal?
coming.
It's coming.
Yeah,
It was 2 years, so it's this year and next year, right?
2021.
I think it's 20 and 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2021.
Yeah,
So then the next project we would be looking at is on 21,
22.
22.
Yeah.
22, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Which I personally, just given what we've learned from the first several years of projects is not
Well,
unreasonable.
no, but they've been huge projects and very needed ones. I'm not
Yeah, but
doubting-
I'm just even thinking that very first project that we did, it was a very long, many of those projects were very long-term. How long did it take to get the shade at Mizell, even though?
Year and a half, two.
Yeah, it just,
It takes long.
Right.
It takes a long time.
So it's good to think ahead,
Right.
knowing that you're going to have the money there. Think how you're going to spend it there, because everything else takes a while.
it's sort of planning to buy a new car or planning to put a new roof on the house. It takes planning and saving, and then you put it into action.
Commissioner Craig?
I can understand what you're saying about some of these projects have been, you feel, not accomplished, to start adding new ones. I think psychologically and our responsibility to the community is we should be open to hear future projects from the community. Because I think I think it would be the wrong spin to say we haven't gotten this done yet, so you have to, people wait with your ideas. So I support the idea that we should be open to the public for future ideas and projects.
There is one.
I'm sorry.
There's one community that the Tahkeet's master plan that I met with them this week, and they want to come back and talk to Measure J about trying to implement the Tahkeet's master plan with trails and things like that. So that's one community organization that might come before the commission in the future to look at future projects.
And doesn't that fall under the umbrella of parks, the master plan?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to Sid's comment, it is like, I'd agree. I think you should continue to open to the community, and that's not what I was saying. It's just like, but you're going to be looking at the 21, 22 money. It'll take you 6 to 8 months just to get those ask for them, go through them. And then even then, it takes another 6 months to a year for the city to kind of come up with how the budget's going to work. By then, you've already allocated the money. So, yeah, I would open it up.
And I think the first step of that is identifying a theme. So what we've had the last several years are groups that have come in with a theme to propose to this group, and then accept this group then, like the parks piece was.
I remember when you came and did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And is that something we could put out to the other commissions, Arts Commission?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And have
And have them
They'll come and
present?
do a presentation.
And do you open it up public-wide as well?
Well, anybody
Or-
could come in with a theme, yeah.
Sure.
But I think we're probably more likely to get something from city boards and commissions.
Right, right.
Except for drainage.
Yeah, well,
This is a whole other thing.
Okay, and that gives us a goal too with the new commissioners.
well, and I think this is a good discussion to have, and I just can't, I will just say it again, we learned so much through that first project.
Right.
And totally changed our focus because of sort of the bottleneck the projects created on the commission with the city. There, no way, no how, enough staff to do all of the work associated with all of these individual specialized projects that we did in that first go-around.
I would like to say something about all these individual projects. When I look at this list, I look at it from the perspective of which projects benefit the most people and which are important for safety and quality of life. And so when I see things like the Plaza Theater for so much money, I absolutely go crazy. That is not something that the majority of people of Palm Springs need. And don't get me started on Indian Canyon two-way, but I look at it from the point of view of how many people benefit or how much do we really need it? Is the animal shelter something that the whole city needs to support, or should they do their own grant writing?
Are you looking at this page?
Yes.
Okay. This is the page I'm looking at. This was the first group of community projects. So each one of these lines was a community project. And that's where the bottleneck was. These are city requested projects, not community.
Yeah, these are
Community staff.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
But still,
what we're
we keep
being
seeing
presented-
this list.
Yeah, and this is more general,
Yeah.
general fund, Measure J, but not our 1 million allotment for community projects.
I understand.
And, yeah, and then with this, obviously, we can't fund all of it. It's 38 million, and that's why the plaza is gonna sit there for a while.
Until the people who really care about making it happen do something.
Or the city sells the property.
Yeah, either way.
I mean, these things are on the list because they're appropriate for us to consider. It doesn't mean that we are going to recommend them as a commission. And at the end of the day, the city council will decide how to allocate the funds. But the thing I'm looking at here, Joel, is usually in February, we see a lot of new unfunded capital projects. And this list is pretty much last year's list, correct? So are we going to see more? What happened last year is after we had put in our first draft of our top 5, we got 2 more projects that belonged in the top 5 after the fact. And so we had to redo it. And I would like to avoid that going forward if we can. That happened, that's okay. And the commission decided anonymously that they were 2 really important projects. So we did put forward and we changed that. But I was just looking at this list and realizing that this really isn't, these aren't new to us.
For the most part, they're carryovers from prior lists.
I've also found, attending a great deal of council meetings, that when they have a discussion about a new idea they have on the agenda, 8 out of 10 times you're hearing them say at the end of it, we'll have to talk about this for Measure J to get funding.
Especially JR.
Hello.
Commissioners, can we go back to Schedule 1, please? I think one of the questions that was asked was that the $1.193 million, is that going back a carryover? That generally, the excess revenue over the budget does stay in the budget. Was that the question? Or did you want to know about the projects, each project which was carried over or not carried over? Just so I'm clear.
No, not just these, go ahead.
No, I was asking the 1.193 is, we got more money in than what we had budgeted, so that's carried into,
Yes.
yeah.
That stays in the fund. Any Measure J tax money stays in this fund and allocated for projects or the debt service.
Right, okay, thank you.
and that was the money I was asking about, yeah,
At
Side-
this point in time, you could go ahead and
sidewalks,
flag it. for-
yeah.
Put a circle around or whatever, that goes to sidewalks.
And then spend it really quick. Then spend it really quick.
Well, between that. and the
That's what I'm
savings,
talking
We may
about.
have the money we need.
Yeah.
Right, and that was kind of my point earlier.
Yeah.
And then try to spend it, we joke, but yeah, if it's designed and planned, try to get the bids out and spend it and close the books on a lot of it.
And the other piece of this, all of those 10 items that we went through last year about prioritizing and what should we keep and blah, 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 we can revisit those because this is new information and it's a big new information at $2 million. So we might want to rethink what we want to do with the biking paths and stuff like that and or we might not. But when we have this discussion, I would bring this list as well that we'd already gone through.
You know, a quick question, Nancy, on the, so the community projects are then continued on the second page, that long list?
Are you on Schedule 1?
Pardon?
Are you still on Schedule 1?
Yeah, on Schedule 1.
Right.
I see community projects, and then there's unscheduled capital project.
Correct, for 443,000.
Yeah, so then that just kind of
100,000.
continues on with all these.
Exactly.
Okay.
I don't think these are community projects.
No.
No, there's just the grouping
Yeah.
in highlighted in blue that you'll see. So each highlighted area is the different projects they have. So above the community projects, you'll have street repairs. And your community projects, I believe, ends right here, right under the community sidewalks.
Okay, any other comments? All right, do we have, thank you, staff, and thank you, Nancy. Do we have any public comment? Any staff member comments? Going once, going twice. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Craig?
Last year, when Commissioner Johnson and I were sitting at a table for Measure J at the picnic, it was a major embarrassment because we had no banner, we had nothing. We couldn't, Mike ran around and tried to find us a sign.
Mark?
A mark, excuse me. And I brought up at the April meeting last year that about we need to get a tent, we need to have signage, chairs, table, cover on it, and asked, and there was discussion about it from the standpoint, and Jeff Keel said that we could do this, and we voted, I hope I'm right on saying voted, up to $2,000. It won't cost anywhere near that figure. I'm talking about it'll probably cost total at the most around $600 for everything. And the picnic is coming up in March, and I wanted to be able to find out if I deal with you, Nancy, on this, but I'm happy to take on getting the tent done, having the banner done on it, the signage, the cover, the chairs, and bring it to it, just so we have a presence that doesn't look embarrassing.
Great.
I will look into the budgeted amount, and we can touch base on what was needed, and I'll look back at the minutes and notes to see what's available.
Okay, and I can bring to, I'll give you what the cost will be.
Okay, great,
front.
thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
If I can just add on, Mark and I did the first couple of booths at the picnic, and there was no money allotted for the booth. I think ultimately we got a postcard.
We did.
But, and Kristen, one of the other commissioners, had a tent, so a canopy, so that came out. But what we did that I think was very effective was we brought in a couple of the large J, very colorful J signs that go onto the projects. And that was what brought the people to the booth.
That's a good idea, because I see
tried to
the,
find them
We
last
tried to
year.
find him, we couldn't find
Right.
him.
Well,
He drove around the city. They
Well-
were all gone.
gee, and I used to go pick them up off the street after people.
I'll make sure that I speak to Chief Reyes to get the Measure J sign that's in front of the construction going on
Yeah.
right now over on South Civic Drive. It
But is
says-
that the J? It's just.
It says something
No,
for Measure J?
Yeah, it's the old sign, and facilities and maintenance probably has them
Okay.
over there. So Stacy would
I'm
probably
going to say
be a
check with
good.
Stacy Schaefer.
Yeah,
We can facilitate looking for those if we can find them in
Okay.
the facilities.
Yeah, maybe
just
there's
wanna
some
make
in
a
a
presence.
closet or
They're
something.
probably in
Yeah.
a lot of
We'll talk to Stacy.
bedrooms on walls, teenager bedrooms on walls. But I took mine back after the last time we used them at a picnic.
okay.
But they're very colorful, and they stick in the ground, and we just had one going from either direction, and it brought the people.
Yeah, that's nice. And we ended up, I think we got a tent at the 11th hour from Commissioner
John.
Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
lent us a tent.
Mhm.
Okay, Thank you.
And along those lines, for the picnic, the communication subcommittee, it's David Gray and John Williams and myself, so I'm the only one here. We are trying to put together a one-page handout for homes in Palm Springs about what Measure J has accomplished. And I haven't been on the commission as long as some of the others here. If you would kindly either email me and John and David what you think should be included in that, we would appreciate it, or else, write it up and bring it to the next meeting. I'll show you. So, this was what Amy Blaisdell showed me that had gone out, but this is a nice kind of thing to list.
Is that a custom size?
I don't think so. This is what they, I can find out.
No, it's not anybody, but it's a standard, it's a large
Okay.
mailer postcard, so
Okay.
it's
Yeah,
standard for a printer,
yeah.
for a print shop to do. It would, it'd have to be something where it would just be very bullet point, very brief,
Exactly.
and probably highlight the sexiest of all the projects, list like 50 of them.
Yeah, I mean, what you could do is instead of listing all the streets that are done, it's just streets.
Oh, no, not all the streets. Right.
Here's
Right.
Yeah,
the
75
$8 million
miles.
we've spent.
Yeah,
on
you'd want to be
streets.
kind of generic, but if there's some things that are really,
well,
That stands out.
the high school auditorium, big, big
The
things.
Architecture and Design Museum. There could be
Exactly.
photos that would be.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Okay, thank you.
any other commissioner comments?
I'm just going to add, you all have my email, so if there is any questions, please don't hesitate, because I'm glad to give input as well.
Yeah. I do, of course, have comments. Jim and I were at the One Palm Springs Brown Bag, which is a monthly meeting, informational meeting that the Communication Committee does, and they're always excellent, and today was no exception. We had the person who will be the new director of the Palm Springs campus speaking, and his name was Scott Atkins. Yes, thank you. I couldn't remember. My question for him was in relation to parking on that campus. And he's saying that at this point, they expect to do surface parking that's, he didn't know where it would be. He hasn't seen any drawings that include parking. And later in his presentation, he mentioned that they expect 2,000 to 3,000 students at this campus, and add to that faculty and staff. And even though there's good bus transportation there, that's a good bus corridor on both Baristo and Farrell and Tockwitz. I'm really uncomfortable, and I'm concerned about the neighborhoods around this development, this project, if the college is not looking at parking. And so I just am thinking that might be something to put on your radar about inquiring about what they're going to do about parking before they start building. And if they can go underground with parking, that could be really good. And they need to plan for growth there. So parking was a big consideration. And then I think it was last month, Marcus was saying that the city was done with road diets, and therefore bike lanes. And my question is, has the city evaluated all of those to make sure they actually go someplace and are connected? And if,
The answer is yes. They are aware that some of those are not connected. I couldn't answer the question because I didn't know specifically which ones were not connected, but I said that it was, that it was brought up here and that we would like to allocate the $515,000 that we have already in the bike budget or whatever it was. Yeah. To connecting
connect them.
those.
Yeah.
So they're aware of that.
Yeah. So just like making sure that Baristo is going to be a very popular street that has huge gaps in the sidewalks between the high school and the college and the library and everything that, you know, the 55-plus houses, assisted living places, and that it's a direct path to downtown or with a jog.
Is there a place we can find out where those gaps are? I mean, I don't know.
We've got the plans
Joel?
in engineering.
I think we can find out exactly where those are and where they terminated. You know, there's a-
That'd be perfect. That'd be great.
And then, I mean, they're all designed, they're all ready to go, so. But again, anticipating the college coming, those were two things that just are a concern to me. And I wonder, and I don't know what the planning is for these kinds of things, but the bus cutouts at the high school, across from the high school parking lot, there is a bus cutout, and frequently there seems to be a bus waiting to get into the bus cutout. There's a bus in it and a bus then waiting to get into it. And it just seems like maybe given the high school and the college right across from each other, that the city may consider doing a double.
making it wider.
Yeah, and probably with more, and that's probably a Sunline thing as well as the shelters there. But just thinking about that in advance and planning for it, or talking with Sunline to make plans for it, just seems prudent.
And how involved does the city get? Do they have to go through city engineering for anything that they're doing on their property?
The COD campus, it goes to the Division of State Architects. So a lot of times cities don't get to have input on what's being done. It's just like schools. They come in,
Right,
they tell you
'cause
this is a school site, this is where it's going, and then they design it.
Because the normal rules don't apply. I mean, it would be one thing if this was a commercial entity.
Correct. It's
Right.
going to go through the Division of State Architect for the layout, the parking, the construction.
But would the city get involved as far as streets surrounding it? That's our,
Once they go into the public streets, yes, we have input. We get to say, but the streets are fully developed around the area. So maybe if there's traffic impacts, we would look at the traffic analysis, traffic report. But for what's going on internally, it goes to the Division of State Architects.
because I do feel the bus issue is going to be a bigger issue. And again, all 2,000 to 3,000 students aren't going to be there all at once. They have classes on Monday and then again on Thursday, or they're at night. And, it's all going to be distributed throughout a 5-day week. But again, I think we have to, hopefully we would work collectively with them and look at, bus stops, accommodating that traffic. There will be a lot of increased traffic. So.
And the bus stop at Farrell is a major jaywalking area. Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll start using the bike lane.
And, well, I anticipate there will be.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to anticipate, once this gets going. This is going to be, I think the city has to really mirror the development.
Getting in and out, and, I mean, you know how that could be a.
Disaster.
I'll have a conversation with Marcus about all your concerns and
Okay.
make sure that.
Don't tell them where they came from.
And they definitely want to move. I mean, they have a very aggressive timeline if it really happens.
2022, they'll see their first students. But they haven't hired an
I was gonna say-
architect
I was going
yet.
to say, if that,
It is
it'll be in a
aggressive,
trailer.
Yeah, they say they don't have an architect yet,
They won't have a
so
building then.
we'll see, but
I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be great for that location, but I just kept, these red flags kept jumping up and.
quick comment from me. I want to thank Mark and Christine for staying on for, gosh, probably like 3 months. Was it 6? Oy. And for all that you've done, you guys have given a lot of your time, and I'm still kind of wading through the weeds here and learning, and excuse a lot of my ignorance as we move forward. And we're going to have a lot of other new commissioners joining board, and it's going to look very different as we move forward from our the people that came before us and kind of devised all of this. So we might reach out to you, who knows, or feel free to email us and say, hey, you're messing up. Do it this way. I don't mind looking for those emails.
Or drop in at the meetings.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we'll have some public comment for a change. That would be nice.
Just kidding. That'd be worth it.
Well, with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.